To millions of visitors, this is the very symbol of London. Buckingham Palace, the Royal Standard flying. This morning, that scene from the tourist picture books comes alive, the backdrop to a 250-year-old ceremonial. In front of the palace wait the 4 divisions of the sovereign's escort of the household cavalry. The 1st and 2nd found by the Life Guards. A regiment formed from a group of loyal gentlemen who'd accompanied King Charles II to the continent during his exile in the 1650s. They carry the sovereign's standard of the Life Guards. It bears 29 of the regiment's 58 battle honours, ranging from Dettingen in 1743 to the Gulf War of 1991. But splendid as this scene may be, it's but a curtain raiser. The real focus of this morning's birthday parade lies 3/4 of a mile away, down the Mall, across the 93 acres of St James's Park on Horse Guards Parade. This grey morning, Horse Guards has the flash of vivid colour that means Her Majesty's Foot Guards are on parade. On parade and in attendance on the colour, there will be troop this morning. The Queen's colour of the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards. The 6 guards, standing to the west of the parade ground, form an L shape, an echo of the hollow square that in battle would have stood to protect the precious colour. Because first and foremost, they're highly trained soldiers. The Guards' memorial on the fringe of St James's Park stands testimony to that. In its life-size bronze figures, cast from captured cannon, rests the spirit of comrades lost in 2 world wars and more recent conflicts, their sacrifice remembered.
The men on reaching the ridge were met by a tornado of shrapnel fire. Nevertheless, the brigade advanced with the steadiness of men on parade, and men in other battalions have spoken again and again of that wonderful advance as being one of the most glorious and impressive sights of the war, and of how they were thrilled to see those large silhouettes pressing silently and inescapably forward against the skyline.
The inheritors of that proud tradition stand on parade this morning. The Escort and No. 2 Guard, found by 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards. They can be identified by a red plume on the right of the bearskin, buttons in groups of 2, signifying they're the 2nd Regiment of Foot Guards, and for their collar badge, the Garter Star. No. 3 Guard, which stands across the central carriageway of Horse Guards, found by No. 7 Company, Coldstream Guards. No. 4 Guard is found by Nijmegen Company Grenadier Guards, their plumes on the left. A white plume, single buttons, as befits their 1st regiment status, and a grenade as a collar badge. No. 5 Guard at the north end of the line is found by 1st Battalion Welsh Guards, the youngest of the Guards regiments. Identified by a white plume worn on the left of the bearskin, buttons in 5s, and the collar emblem of a leek. Turning the corner, we find No. 6 Guard from F Company Scots Guards. They wear no plume, buttons are in 3s, and their collar badge is the thistle. The Irish Guards are not on parade this morning because they're serving in the Balkans. But the band of the Irish Guards is part of the massed bands on parade here on Horse Guards. For the Irish Guards band, this is their last engagement before they set off to join their colleagues in the Balkans. Amongst the Prime Minister's guests, the Secretary of State for Defence, Right Honourable George Robertson, who will have been hearing news overnight of the movements of British troops across the border from Macedonia. The open square. The officers beginning to march forward to take post before the 6 guards. and the colour that will be trooped this morning. The focus of this birthday parade. Meanwhile, at Buckingham Palace, we await the departure of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, her guests and members of our household. Order, fanfare, and from the mounted bands of the household cavalry, a royal salute. Joining Her Majesty the Queen Mother in the carriage, Sophie Rhys-Jones and Prince Edward, whom some of you may have heard are shortly to be married. Of course, on the eve of the wedding, Sophie will sleep at the Queen Mother's nearby home, that's Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. His regiment, an audience here at Horse Guards of 6,500, most of them extremely well versed in the precise requirements of this parade, not to mention an audience of tens of millions around the world. It's quite a responsibility, carrying what in effect is the heart of the regiment. Malplaquet, Waterloo, the Somme. It's the roll call of British military history. The spirit of endeavour and the loss of comrades past, woven in threads of silk, drawing together the significance of today's colour.
It's the history, the spirit, it's what has gone on before us. I mean, it's all those battle honours that you see emblazoned on the colours represent great deeds that have been done by our forebears, and deeds to which we would aspire today as well. A modern fighting force is all about teamwork and fighting for those who are around you. And I think men in battle tend to fight for their comrades rather than for any great ideals. And of course, to a great extent, the colours symbolise that very kinship between all of us here in the battalion and the common bond we have.
That sense of regimental family could be seen when past and present Coldstreamers gathered a few weeks ago at Windsor for the presentation of new colours. Colours to be consecrated by the Chaplain General and presented by their Colonel-in-Chief.
It's always a very special event for any regiment to have new colours presented to it. And to have them presented by the Sovereign especially is of course a great honour, and one which we are fortunate enough always to have, because of course we are household troops and she is our Colonel-in-Chief.
The public demonstration of that unique relationship between Guards and Sovereign is the ceremony we watch on Horse Guards this morning, known to the Guards not as trooping the colour, but as the birthday parade.
The parade was originally a means of displaying the colour to one's own battalion, or indeed to other people as well. Its origins in its current format also stem from being a birthday tribute to the Sovereign by her household troops, and that's very much what it still is today.
The commanding officer of 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Bourne-May, now on parade as Field Officer in Brigade Waiting, commanding officer of the parade, riding the 15-year-old charger, Ludovic. But of course, central to the ceremony is the escort for the colour. Whilst at Buckingham Palace, we wait for the first glimpse of Her Majesty the Queen. Coming through the central arch of the palace at the beginning of her carriage drive along the Mall to Horse Guards to take centre stage for her birthday party. Her Majesty travelling in the ivory mounted phaeton, which carriage aficionados tell me was the open-topped sports car of the 18th century. Dressed today in a yellow silk dress with matching jacket and coat, yellow hat with white spots and flowers. Wearing, of course, the Guard's all-rank brooch. Forming up behind Her Majesty, the Royal Colonels. Among them, Princess Anne, riding for the first time in this parade as Colonel of the Blues and Royals. Whilst on horse guards, the guards have been brought to attention as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's procession, turns across the parade ground. Majesty's carriage drawn by Patrick and King's troop, driven by Deputy Head Coachman John Nelson. They go beneath the centre arch of Horse Guards, where the Queen Mother and her guests will watch the parade from the window of the Major General's office. This is a long and hard parade. It's the result of weeks of training, riding skills for the mounted officers, drill for the men. So everyone knows instinctively, precisely, what to do at each part of the ceremony. But for the participants, however much hard work it is, it's an opportunity to hone regimental spirit that they're proud to be part of.
Right! Sergeant, sir. Dressing, sir, please. Heads up.
Jump the guard, move to right, off person, please.
That's not bad, Escort.
The pride is as ingrained as the parade ground drill. But for third-generation Guardsman Sergeant Kevin Stott, today is the ceremonial high point of 19 years' service.
It's a fantastic day for the regiment, fantastic day for the escort, but it's even a more fantastic day for me personally to be chosen command officer in the regiment. Sergeant Major chosen me to be part of the colour party, and it just, words can't really describe how great it'll be. And I just hope everything goes all right on the day. Imagine it must be like Aaron Shearer putting a Newcastle United top on, because I'm sure he's not nervous when he plays. Now, I shouldn't be nervous. The professionalism should come out, like we'll do for the whole of the Guards.
There's experience talking. But if, like Guardsman Dadden Hughes, you've only 8 months in the Guards under your webbing belt, who are you more nervous of parading before, your sovereign or your drill sergeant?
In a way you feel confident, in a way you feel nervous. You're doing something that loads of people are going to watch, like, all around the world. They're going to watch the Queen's birthday parade, and you're going to be actually on the main thing, the escort.
It may be his first birthday parade, but Dadden Hughes knows exactly what's expected.
Well, this ceremony's been going on for years now, and there's a standard to meet every year. There's got to be the Queen's standard.
But before the Queen's standard, there's the small matter of the RSM standard.
You can enjoy it. 45-degree angle, sir. Come on, that's it, sir. That means you won't fall over, sir. Second in command, sir. Pull your sword back a little bit, sir. There you go, sir. Thank you, sir.
Traditionally, the highest accolade, carrying the colour, goes to one of the youngest subalterns, this year Second Lieutenant Charlie Thurston. He's trained for jungle warfare, and he's trained for duty in Northern Ireland. But now it's intensive training for Horse Guards, in the gym with the drill sergeant.
2, 3, 4, in.
think one of the unique things about the Guards to have the mix between doing obviously the operational service and the ceremonial service as well. It does have a huge relevance. The things that you need to be good at on the drill square: discipline, steadiness under pressure, and as well as anything else, just team spirit and the will to work together, even though you may be uncomfortable and you may not be having a very good time. And all those skills are things which are reflected in what the skills you need on the battlefield.
A lot of brave men have died to wear that uniform, and it gives you, like, once you put it on, you become Superman. Especially on Horse Guards Parade. So it's great. It's a proud uniform to wear, because you're not just stepping on for yourself. You're stepping on for the comrades who have fallen in the years past. Crimea, Waterloo, First World War, Second World War, right up to the modern conflicts. And it's such a proud moment to know that you're there representing your regiment, your Queen and country. And this will probably be the last year I would do it, and it's going to be so special for me.
Sergeant Stott, with the colour, looking as cool as his footballing favourite Shearer, and certainly in the Premier League of parade ground smartness. Sergeant Stott flanked by sentries Paul Welby and Ali Kama. On the west side of the parade ground, under the trees of St James's Park, King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. 6 teams of 6 horses, carefully graded in colour from light to dark bay, each drawing limber and 13-pounder gun. King's Troop under the command of Major Will Connell, a post he took up last year. He's a member of the British Young Rider 3-day event team. And down the approach road from the Mall, past the ivy-covered citadel of the Second World War, a communication centre built in 1940, comes the head of the royal procession. Led by the Brigade Major, Lieutenant Colonel Andrew Ford, Grenadier Guards, and 4 troopers of the Life Guards. The main procession stretching away down the tree-lined Mall back to the Victoria Memorial. The guards wait as the royal procession approaches. Precisely 50 metres behind the 4 troopers, the mounted bands of the Household Cavalry who've been playing down the Mall. And on their approach will play the slow march Royal Standard by Earl Brigham, the slow march of the Royal Military School of Music. When you look at this scene, however uncool it may appear in some quarters, it's easy to understand why household division instructors are in demand all over the world to teach the arts of pageantry. Her Majesty in the phaeton drawn by Iceland and Auckland. The postilion riding Iceland in full state postilion livery is the Queen's head coachman, Colin Henderson. This carriage in which Her Majesty travels was rescued from old age and decay to be refurbished specifically to be used in the birthday parade in 1987. Before that, it had been kept in the Orangery at Windsor. First and second divisions of the Sovereign's escort, found by the Life Guards, making their way to their places on the west side of this parade ground. These horses, Iceland and Auckland, since the end of last month have both been put to an exercise vehicle to get them in trim for today, to ensure they can be held to the quick walking pace that would be expected of them down the Mall and around this parade ground. In addition, they'll have had a good hour of exercise before the parade this morning. Cheers from a crowd. You may be able to see on the left there a group of brownies who've been here all morning. The crowd stand in respect. Colonels salute the colour as they pass. As Her Majesty makes her way before the old Admiralty building to the saluting dais. Her Majesty approaches the dais, and the reasons that she chose this carriage for the birthday parade are entirely practical. Postilion ridden, it's easy to manoeuvre on the parade square. With step in place and no door to open, it avoids delay at moments like this. Her Majesty in place at precisely 11 o'clock. There follows the inspection of the line. The massed bands, under the direction of Lieutenant Colonel Philip Hills, Grenadier Guards, and Senior Director of Music, Household Division, play patriotic airs. Annie Laurie, the Eaton boating song, the Ash Grove, Molly Malone, and beginning with a song from Cornwall, the Sweet Nightingale. Following Her Majesty, the Royal Colonels, the Princess Royal Colonel of the Blues and Royals, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, Colonel of the Scots Guards, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Colonel of the Grenadier Guards, His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, Colonel of the Welsh Guards. Turns by the escort and number 1 guard, preceded in the parade by the brigade major and 4 troopers of the Life Guards. In procession with Her Majesty, the Master of the Horse, the Lord Vestey, the Crown Equerry and equerries in waiting, as the carriage turns before number 6 guard. The coachman acknowledges the colour, the Royal Colonel's salute. The Royal Colonels pass behind number 6 guard as Her Majesty makes her way towards the massed mounted bands, the Sovereign's escort and the King's troop. The bands have taken up the quick march melodies from the north. On Ilkla Moor, Baht, Keep Your Feet Still, Geordie, Hinny and Blaydon races, all representing that tract of northern England that's fertile recruiting territory for the Coldstream Guards. The north curve of the centre carriageway, the Queen's coachman and the Royal Colonels acknowledge the sovereign standard of the Life Guards. Majesty passes King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery as the procession makes its way back across the square. This patch of London, which is a reminder of the far-off days when this was the parade ground and sports field of the kings who lived in Whitehall Palace before the court moved across the park to St James's. the slow progress back to the saluting dais. Also in the parade, the Major General, who's also GOC London District, riding the 10-year-old gelding Herman. This is the second birthday parade for Major General Evelyn Webb Carter. The saluting dais uncovered, despite the fact that we had extremely heavy rain overnight. Obviously the palace weather forecast suggests that it's going to stay fair at least until the end of the birthday parade. The earliest records of trooping the colour can be found in order books of the Grenadier and Coldstream Guards of 250 years ago. 18th of February 1749. The colours be always trooped at the mounting and dismounting of the guard, unless in very bad weather. Well, there has been very bad weather on a couple of occasions since the war, when the parade has had to be cancelled. Fortunately, this morning it is merely grey. Senior Drum Major Colin Ayling orders the slow troop to the march, the Hugenots by Merloh, used at this point in the parade since the end of the last century. Bands halt precisely at the north curve of the carriageway, and the slow march, 65 paces per minute, gives way to the eventually to the 116 paces per minute quick march. Precisely positioned, they step off to the quick march, Sons of the Brave, by Thomas Bidgood, published in 1899, dedicated to the Duke of York's military school. As the bands and drums clear the central carriageway, drummer Stephen Vine, 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, breaks away to take up a position 2 paces to the right of the escort, where he will give the drummers call to troop the colour through the ranks. On parade today with number 2 guard is Captain James Rouse, son of the late Colonel William Rouse, Colonel Coldstream Guards, who died shortly after the presentation of the colours that will be trooped today. Colonel Rouse's other son, Richard, is serving with the Irish Guards in Macedonia. The drummer's call signals a change of command of the escort for the colour. Command passes from the captain to the subaltern, Captain Jamie Newell. An orderly crosses the approach road to take the pace stick from the regimental sergeant major, David Hall, Coldstream Guards. He draws his sword, the only time that an RSM will do so on any parade in peacetime.
Escort for the colour! In close order!
The subaltern of the escort gives his first command. Eyes front with no command spoken.
Escort for the colour! By the left! Kick march!
The escort steps off to the British Grenadiers. No matter which regiment's colour is being trooped, the British Grenadiers is always used at this point in the parade because the right flank company of every battalion used to be a Grenadier company. The escort marks time while the massed bands clear the line of march. The subaltern now looking for a small white marker stone 15 paces from the colour party, where he'll halt the escort.
Escort for the camp! In open order! Right! Down!
Another order that you'll hear many times in this parade is change arms, occasioned by the need to ease the burden of a cumbersome rifle that weighs 11 pounds, was never designed for drill work and can't be rested on the ground. The Regimental Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major David Hall, 1st Battalion, Coldstream Guards, marches from the rear of the escort, sword drawn in symbolic protection of the colour. He's followed forward by the ensign for the colour, 2nd Lieutenant Charles Thurston, 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, who will carry the colour through the ranks of assembled guardsmen. The RSM salutes the colour. He takes a pace forward, receives the colour in his left hand from Sergeant Kevin Stott, Sergeant of the colour party. As predicted, no sign of nerves. In turn, the ensign salutes the colour. He will then sheathe his sword, receive the colour, and place it in his colour belt. The ensign turns and shows the colour that will be trooped. The escort has now become escort to the colour. You'll have noticed that at the escort presenting arms, the warrant or non-commissioned officers on the flanks turned outwards and came to the high port, another symbolic representation of protection of their precious colour. The RSM, Sergeant of the Colour Party, return to the escort to the colour and take post at the rear. The two sentries take their positions at the right file of the escort.
Escort to the colour! Change out! Escort to the colour! River! By the centre! Slow march!
The slow march escort to the colour, while the massed bands carry out the fearsomely complex spin wheel. The most fastidious of drill sergeants would find it impossible to write down. And I'm told that many a bandsman heaves a considerable sigh of relief when the manoeuvre finishes and he's facing in the right direction. band cut out briefly so that the command of the field officer can be more clearly heard by the 6 guards on parade. And for escort and bandsmen, this is a trying moment. The drummers need to pick up the beat while the escort continues to move in slow time. This is the Grenadiers' slow march, used to march Grenadiers back to barracks after changing the guard. For centuries, the colours of a regiment were carried into battle and were used as a rallying point for the troops. The Roman eagle was used in a similar way, thrown forward in the fight in the knowledge that the men would follow to save it. So it was necessary for the colours to be easily recognised in the heat of battle. They were trooped through the ranks, in camp, before engagement, and eventually each day on campaign and in barracks. Each battalion has its own colours, the Queen's colour and the regimental colour. The 3 senior regiments of foot guards also have state colours. It's the Queen's colour of the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards that's being trooped today. In centuries past, the colours would be lodged each night in a billet, which became the battalion's headquarters. The colour perhaps hung from a window or a doorway to mark a rallying point in moments of attack. And then, each morning, the colour was marched with an escort to its appointed place among the assembled troops. The guards here assembled in 2 ranks, a reminder of Wellington's masterful tactics at Waterloo. A reminder too that these are soldiers that stand ready to give service to sovereign and nation when called upon to do so. 3 out of the 5 Foot Guards battalions will be in Northern Ireland later this year. I've already mentioned the Irish Guards in Macedonia. Some of No. 7 Company Coldstream Guards are with the Household Cavalry Regiment in Bosnia, others with K4 in Macedonia. The escort to the colour, having cleared No. 2 Guard, resumes its place on the right of the line.
Escort to the colour! Present! And...
Guards slope arms and the Household Cavalry slope swords.
Officers, take post! Quick march!
The officers take post, the colour moves to the rear of the escort, and numbers 1 to 5 guards turn about.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards,
That order from the adjutant of the parade, Captain Christopher Pullen.
Right, go! Quick, march!
Numbers 2 to 5 guard, right form at the halt. The first time that most of these men have marched for more than an hour. A manoeuvre performed to the corps of drums playing buttons in twos.
Numbers 1 to 5 guards will advance. About 10. Number 6 guard. Close order. March. Move to the right in threes. Form threes. Right.
The field officer in brigade waiting,
Guards.
riding Ludovic, which has been on the birthday parade 8 times, but actually normally carrying the brigade major, which can be a problem if the horse tries to do what it has done in years before. Jonathan Bourne May appears to be the master of it. Guards begin their march past in slow and quick time. First to Old Coldstream Marches, arranged by Lieutenant Colonel Trevor Sharp, who most notably appeared on the credits of Dad's Army. It was the band of the Coldstream Guards under his direction that recorded the signature tune. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother, casting a critical eye over the drill as the guards make their way down the south side of the parade ground, behind the gardens of Downing Street. Guards now marching past the Prime Minister, who's in the stand immediately behind his garden. escort led by the field officer and brigade major. Officer of Brigade Major salute with lowered sword. The colour being trooped, the Queen's colour, crimson, bearing the star of the Order of the Garter with the Imperial crown above. Below the star, the Battle Honour, Gulf 1991, and the Sphinx with Egypt superscribed. There are further 42 Battle Honours on the colour, beginning with Tangier 1680. The slow march of the Coldstream Guards, Figaro. It said that Mozart saw the changing of the guard at St James's Palace in 1764 and decided to write a march for the regiment's musicians. Scipio, the slow march of the Grenadier Guards. Number 4 Guard, march past. Scipio first performed in London in 1726. Number 5 Guard, found by 1st Battalion Welsh Guards, march past the slow march. Men of Harlech, said to commemorate the heroic defence of Harlech Castle when it was besieged by the Earl of Pembroke during the Wars of the Roses. Finally, number 6 Guard, F Company Scots Guards, marches past to the slow march of the Scots Guards, the Garb of Old Gaul, composed by General John Reed in 1770. Bringing up the rear, the Adjutant, Captain Christopher Pullen, 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards. Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Bourne-May, commanding officer of the parade, rides out 10 yards, turns his horse and salutes Her Majesty. Meanwhile, the music has changed to the slow march Chatsworth, written by Major David Marshall, dedicated to the Duke of Devonshire, who served with both 3rd and 5th Battalions Coldstream Guards. His brother was killed in action in World War II when serving with the 5th Battalion. He was awarded the Military Cross. There have been changes down the years in this seemingly changeless parade. For example, there's no record of Queen Victoria ever taking the salute in London, but she did at Windsor. In her diary of the 24th of May 1895, after looking at my presence, we breakfasted at 11:30. The trooping of the colours took place in the quadrangle. The bands played extremely well, as indeed they do today.
Break! Enter! Quick! Time! Quick! March!
The field officer orders the quick march. The music, Under Freedom's Flag. And the march passed at 116 paces per minute. Officer has ridden across to lead the parade again. The escort, the field officer and the major of the parade. not the brigade major as I previously dubbed him. Smartly marching away down the south side of the parade ground before they turn back to the saluting base. Putting a parade like this together is rather like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. These days the army simply doesn't have a parade square of the same dimensions as Horse Guards. You can imagine just how popular they'd be if they practiced here on busy weekdays. So each element of the parade is practiced separately and slotted together in a couple of dress rehearsals. It's a miracle it works, but work it does. Escort, number 2 Guard, march past the regimental quick march of the Coldstream Guards, Milanollo, adaptation of a tune composed for the Milanollo sisters, twin violinists who toured Britain in 1845. Number 4 Guard, found by Nijmegen Company Grenadier Guards, march past to their regimental quick march, the British Grenadiers. And it's a turn of number 5 Guard. To the regimental quick march of the Welsh Guards, Rising of the Lark, a song which dates from the 18th century, and which is believed was composed by David Owen, harpist from Carnarvon. Number 6 Guard marches past the regimental quick march of the Scots Guards, Hielan Laddie, originally known as cockle shells in 1701. The adjutant brings up the parade and the field officer rides out once more. Music changes again to the quick march, the Lily Whites, composed by Major David Marshall, especially for this birthday parade. Colourful and spectacular as this is, it used to be on an even grander scale. The very largest birthday parade was held on Hyde Park in 1920. There were 10 complete guards on parade that year. And going back further still, there was an age when the monarchs of Europe and noble families from distant lands would gather in London to celebrate an imperial birthday. guards, except for the bass drummer, play softly to allow the command to be heard. Guards conform and left form.
Officers, take post! Quick march!
The officers take post. The colour is returned to the front of the escort.
Guards, in open order! Left and right! Rest! That man will move to the right! 9, 10! Find the death! Quick, rest!
The massed bands and drums move away to the south of the parade square to Hazelmere, a march by Tom Burkett dedicated to his wife Hazel. The massed bands are making way for the massed mounted bands of the Household Cavalry, led by the Director of Music of the Life Guards, Major Malcolm Torrent, and the two drum horses, Constantine and Janus. Janus, nearest to us, a 15-year-old skewbald gelding from the Blues and Royals, who's just back on parade, having been incapacitated for a year with arthritis. And Constantine, an 11-year-old Strawberry Road Clydesdale from the Life Guards. They play for the walk past Preobrazhensky, named after the famous Russian foot guards. This was a favourite piece of music of Lord Louis Mountbatten, Gold Stick of the Life Guards, and they include it on every Life Guard troop as a matter of respect. The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery roll forward their guns in 3 sections. Each gun and limber weighs 1.5 tons. Each of these guns saw action in the First World War. King's Troop keeps alive the traditions of the horse artillery batteries that were the rapid reaction forces of their day. Many such Batteries were stationed in London before the Second World War. The last of them was mechanised in 1939. Music, the Royal Artillery, a slow march composed by the Duchess of Kent's mother of Queen Victoria. As King's troop walk past, led by Major Will Connell, on his charger Mr. Waffles. Acknowledging the guns as they pass, because of course for the artillery the guns are the colour, to be granted the respect of embroidered colours of other regiments. Behind the Royal Horse Artillery comes the Sovereign's escort of the Household Cavalry, led by the Standard Party. The Lifeguard Sovereign Standard is one of those presented in 1993. The music having changed to the Lifeguard Slow March. Walk March, the Blues and Royals, also written by the Duchess of Kent. Behind the Queen, Princess Royal, Colonel of the Blues and Royals. Bringing up the rear, the farriers with their glinting axes. Axes that would be used to dispatch horses injured in battle. The farrier with the black plume is from the Lifeguards. A trumpeter signals the trot. And this is perhaps the most difficult moment for the parade commander, making his commands heard over the clatter of hooves and the rumble of the guns. The music, the Royals. They trot away along the west of the parade ground to Moneymusk and Anonymous, published in 1903 for use by all mounted regiments, played by the massed mounted bands. Guards ordered to present arms in honour of the guns, as the King's Troop and Household Cavalry trot past to Keel Row. 3rd and 4th Divisions of the Sovereign's escort pass Her Majesty, found by the Blues and Royals. Director of Music, Major Malcolm Torrance, salutes. The kettle drummers cross sticks in salute to Her Majesty. When Charles II entered London at his restoration on the 29th of May 1660, his triumphal procession was led by kettle drummers and trumpeters, followed by the King's troop of the Life Guards, the gentlemen soldiers who'd been with him in exile. The state dress of the band is the oldest ceremonial uniform in the regular army. It can only be worn by permission of the monarch or at the request of the Lord Mayor of London. Fair enough, he traditionally paid for it. The band walks slowly away past the Admiralty building towards St James's Park. The Director of Music is watching until the last division of the Sovereign's escort has stopped before turning inwards as a signal to the field officer. The birthday salute to their Colonel-in-Chief is complete. As the mounted band walks away towards the approach road to the Mall, the guards prepare to march back to Buckingham Palace, led by their sovereign. The King's troop has already moved away into the approach road. They are followed now by the massed mounted bands.
Will form 3 ranks! Form 3 ranks! Guards will retire about 10! At the halt, 5 divisions, right forward! Quick march!
To reduce the length of the parade, the guards, having formed 3 ranks, now close up in 6 divisions. To the music, The Adjutant by Burkett.
Divisions will advance about 10!
The keen eye of the royal colonels cast over the parade.
Column. The remainder. Quick march.
Forming close column, the corps of drums play Dashing White Sergeant. Prime Minister and Mrs. Blair watching the end of this parade as the sovereign's escorts move away into the approach road. Led by the lifeguards, followed up by the Blues and Royals. The field officer rides forward to report to Her Majesty.
Your Majesty's Guards are ready to march off, ma'am.
The Queen acknowledges that the guards are ready to withdraw. The field officer trots back, prepares to bring the guards to attention, and in his words, "To your duties by the left, quick march," although Baht with a great deal more authority than I can muster. Through Admiralty Arch comes the carriage procession of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, returning to Buckingham Palace, having left the Horse Guards building by the Whitehall entrance. Smiling and waving to the crowds that are still lining the Mall under the trees. Prince Edward and Sophie Rhys-Jones going back to join the balcony party, no doubt, at Buckingham Palace.
Guards! Stand! Slab! Arms! Guards! To your duties! By the left! Quick march!
Yes, a great deal more authority. The guards march away to the strains of their mass bands playing Children of the Regiment, composed by Julius Fuchik 100 years ago, a bandmaster in Sarajevo. Her Majesty's phaeton, which has been kept in the courtyard of the Admiralty building for the duration of the birthday parade, is returned to the day as the Queen sets off at the head of her guards. When she returns home, Her Majesty will again review her household troops. There'll be a fly past by the RAF. From the balcony at Buckingham Palace, the Queen and her family will acknowledge the crowds that will stream down the Mall after the procession has passed them by. You may have been marvelling at the stamina of these guardsmen. This is a particularly long parade, particularly in hot weather. Yes, they've been spared that this morning. And over the years, there have been many patent remedies to stop guardsmen fainting on long parades like these. But I'm told that the most effective of all is simply to think of what the RSM will say if you do. Most countries have grand military parades of one sort or another, commemorating moments of national victory, most likely. Certainly, most such parades suffer from a touch of triumphalism. But in Britain, the only truly national military parade is in celebration of a birthday. Like all birthdays, it's an occasion to look back over the years and perhaps take stock, a moment to remember friends and family. That's what the people on parade here this morning have been doing. We've been treated to a pageant unrivaled anywhere in the world. Colour, music, sparkling uniforms. A precision that, if transferred to other areas of endeavour, might mean that we could make the trains run on time. For countries struggling to make sense of a rapidly changing world, there's often talk of the burden of history. In this gathering, it's not a burden, but a beacon. It's history and imagination and realism all rolled into one. Because, however splendid they look, Her Majesty's household troops are not toy soldiers. This morning, their colleagues are on their way into Kosovo.